I never thought I'd be the kind of person who got blindsided like this. Not me. I was the one who trusted him completely, who left my phone unlocked for him, who laughed at the thought of any secrets between us. I thought I knew what love looked like, what loyalty meant, and I was sure I was living it. My college years weren't exactly glamorous, but we were those cliché, perfect couple people, walking across campus holding hands, grabbing coffee at that tiny place by the library, even binge-watching random Netflix series together until it was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. It was the kind of thing people would scroll past on Instagram and sigh, "Ugh, college love." But that was us. That was me. And I thought it was forever. His name was Ryan. Ryan with the messy brown hair, that crooked smile that made you feel like he was the only person in the world seeing you, and those eyes that seemed to always catch yours no matter where you were. Everyone liked him. Honestly, it was hard not to. But I didn't care about anyone else's opinions. I cared about him, and for a long time, that was enough. I convinced myself I didn't notice the little things, the missed texts, the distracted glances at his phone, the way he'd laugh a little too hard at certain jokes from people I didn't know. I tried to tell myself I wasn't paranoid, that I just needed to chill. We were young, life was messy, and maybe everyone just got a little space sometimes. But I never imagined the truth would be worse than anything I could have dreamed up in my worst nightmare. It started with a casual Thursday night. I was back in our tiny apartment after my last class, curling up on the couch with a blanket that had seen better days. Ryan had gone to study with some friends. He always had a study group or some project going on. I wasn't worried. I wasn't the kind of person to stalk or hover, and he never gave me a reason to. I remember scrolling through my phone, letting my mind wander, when I saw it. A notification from a number I didn't recognize. At first, I ignored it. Unknown numbers usually meant spam or survey texts, but curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. It was from her, Samantha, his roommate's name. I had met her a handful of times, always polite, always kind, nothing that made me suspicious. But the first text I read shattered something inside me instantly. "Are you sure he's worth it? He's not even trying to hide it from me anymore." I froze. My stomach dropped. My fingers trembled over my phone. I had to read the next one. "I can't believe how fast it's getting serious with her. I mean, right in our apartment? He's insane." I blinked, reread it, hoping somehow my brain had misread, that maybe her was some random girl from class, some fleeting joke. But then the next messages came. "It's tonight. You don't need to be here. He said he loves her. Can you believe it? I keep telling him he's going to get caught, and he just laughs." The room spun. My coffee mug slipped from my hands and shattered on the floor. I sank to the couch, gripping my phone like it was a lifeline. My mind raced. This has to be a mistake. I'm dreaming. This is a joke. Ryan would never. But each word I read pulled the rug out from under every certainty I had held onto for months. I didn't know what to do. I sat there frozen, my chest tight, every instinct screaming at me to run, to scream, to confront him. But a small, terrifying voice in my head whispered, "What if you're wrong?" I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't. Not him. Not us. I stared at the phone for hours, the texts repeating in my mind like a broken record. The more I read, the more I remembered the little things I'd brushed off, the random excuses to leave the apartment, the scent of a perfume I didn't recognize, the way he'd sometimes get that look in his eyes like he was somewhere else entirely. Memories twisted themselves into proof, and for the first time, I realized how blind I'd been. The next day, I didn't talk to him. I watched him from the living room while he got ready for class, laughing with her in the kitchen, that same crooked smile I had once adored. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand answers, but I couldn't. I was paralyzed, and part of me that I hated, wanted to believe he'd explain it, that he'd somehow make it all make sense. But deep down, I knew there was no making sense. I started digging. I know it sounds obsessive, but I needed proof. I couldn't confront him without it. I checked his laptop when he left it open for a second, scrolling through messages, emails, anything that could confirm the texts. And there it was, a conversation with a girl named Emily, screenshot after screenshot, flirty, intimate, the kind of messages that make your chest ache and your stomach twist. It wasn't just harmless
It was planning, dates, confessions of love. Everything I had thought we shared was already being shared with someone else. The sickest part was how casual he was. There was no guilt, no hesitation, just excitement. I couldn't understand it. How could the same person who held me on the couch, who whispered my name in the dark, who told me I was his world, be someone else entirely when he closed the door behind him? I kept replaying our last week together, trying to see if there were any signs I'd missed. Every hug, every kiss, every I love you now felt like a lie wrapped in silk. I didn't tell anyone, not my roommates, not my friends, not my family. I wanted to feel my own anger first, my own betrayal. It was like swallowing a stone. Every time I saw him, my stomach lurched, but I kept my voice calm, my expression neutral. I played the role of the oblivious girlfriend while my mind was a storm. I started noticing all the subtle ways he covered up. The quick text deletions, the late night showers, the nervous laughter when I mentioned someone at school. It all clicked, all of it. By the weekend, I was a mess. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I stayed up all night staring at the ceiling, wondering how I hadn't seen it coming. I replayed every conversation, every date, every laugh, and it was like I was discovering a double life I never knew existed. I thought I knew him, but I didn't, and that was worse than anything. The thought that someone you love could be so effortlessly two-faced. Monday came, and I was barely functioning. I went to class mechanically, my notebook open but my mind elsewhere. Every glance at my phone made my heart leap, imagining more texts, more proof, more evidence of what he was doing while I was trying to build a life with him. And then, during lunch, it happened. I didn't even notice him at first, but there he was with Emily, laughing over something on her phone, their heads close together like I wasn't even in the same universe. I felt something inside me snap. I didn't think I could breathe, but I forced myself to keep walking, to pretend I hadn't seen anything. I sat down with my friends, but every laugh, every smile, every movement of Ryan's across the courtyard felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I couldn't focus, I couldn't function. I just wanted to scream, to shatter everything, to erase him from my memory entirely. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed, my hands shaking, my phone clutched so tightly it left imprints in my skin. I thought about confronting him, about storming into the living room and demanding the truth.
But a part of me, a cowardly, terrified part, knew I wasn't ready. I needed to process it alone, needed to let the rage and the hurt build until I could decide if I wanted revenge, closure, or just to walk away. And that's when I saw it. The text that finally broke me. Samantha again. Last night was insane. He's yours for now, but I swear he's already planning the next one. I dropped my phone. The sound echoed in the room like a gunshot. My hands were trembling, my chest heaving. I curled into myself, trying to disappear, trying to block out the image of them together that I could already see so clearly in my mind. Every memory, every plan we had made, every promise he ever whispered, all of it was poisoned now. I didn't cry, not yet. I just sat there in silence, the apartment around me suddenly feeling like a stranger's house. The walls, the furniture, even the bed where we had spent so many nights felt foreign, like I was living in someone else's life. I didn't know how I was supposed to move forward, how I was supposed to act normal tomorrow, how I was supposed to look him in the eyes and pretend everything was fine when I knew the truth. By the time Ryan walked in, I had made a decision. Not a full, final decision, but a plan to survive this without completely losing myself. I smiled when he came in, tried to ask about his day casually, tried to ignore the tightness in my chest. He didn't notice, or maybe he did, and it didn't matter. He was too busy with his world, the one I wasn't allowed in anymore. I went to bed that night with my mind spinning, replaying the texts, the laughs, the closeness I'd witnessed, the betrayal that felt like it had been building since the beginning. And yet, even in that darkness, a part of me clung to the hope that somehow he'd slip up, that I'd catch him in a way that made this all real, undeniable. I needed proof beyond words, beyond texts, beyond images. I needed him to show me the reality of what he had been doing while I had been trusting him completely. And I knew, deep down, it was only a matter of time before I did. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying everything in my head,
every smile he'd given me, every whispered "I love you" that now felt like a lie. I stared at the ceiling for hours, thinking about what I could do, what I should do. Part of me wanted to confront him immediately, to throw the phone at him and demand answers. But another part, the part that was terrified and humiliated, wanted to watch quietly, to gather more evidence before I exploded. I needed to see it for myself, because until I did, it was just words on a screen. I had always trusted Ryan completely, and now that trust had turned into a weapon against me. The next day was hell. I went to my morning class and couldn't focus. Every time someone spoke, it felt like background noise. My notes were messy scribbles, nothing coherent, and I realized halfway through the lecture that I hadn't written a single thing down. My friends tried to talk to me, but I gave nothing but short, distracted answers. I felt like I was watching my life from outside my body, like I was a character in some nightmare movie I couldn't escape. After class, I decided to follow him. I told myself it wasn't stalking, that it was research, proof for myself that he was actually cheating. I wasn't prepared for what I saw. He met Emily in the parking lot, and the way they looked at each other made my stomach drop. He laughed at something she said, brushed a strand of hair off her shoulder, and kissed her cheek. It wasn't even subtle, it was brazen, and I felt a wave of shame and anger wash over me. I wanted to scream, to throw myself at him and pull him away, but I stayed hidden in my car, shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. I went home after that, my chest tight, my mind racing. I couldn't sit still, couldn't breathe normally. I wandered around the apartment like a ghost, touching nothing, speaking to no one, just trying to make sense of how someone I loved so deeply could live a double life in front of my eyes. Every thought spiraled into anger and disbelief. How could he do this? How could he look me in the eye and tell me I was the only one while planning dates with another girl behind my back? I started documenting everything. Every text, every message, every suspicious moment I had witnessed or remembered, I saved. I felt like I was preparing her a trial in my own head, like this catalog of evidence would somehow protect me from the pain, or maybe justify the explosion I knew was coming. I began to see patterns, dates, times, excuses. Everything fit together, like a puzzle I had ignored for months. The realization made me furious, and the betrayal cut so deep I could feel it in my bones. That weekend, I confronted Samantha, carefully. I didn't tell her who I was at first. I texted her anonymously, pretending to be a concerned friend. I asked her to confirm the texts, to tell me if Ryan was really seeing someone else. I remember waiting by my phone for hours, my hands clammy, my stomach twisted in knots. And when she finally replied, the confirmation was brutal. Not only was he seeing Emily, but it was more serious than I had imagined. They had been meeting outside the apartment, planning secret trips, sharing moments that were supposed to be ours. I couldn't stop shaking. I sat in the car outside our apartment for hours, my phone resting on my lap, trying to process it all. I wanted to scream at Ryan, to tear him apart, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain I felt. But I didn't. I felt trapped in my own body, paralyzed by disbelief and grief. Every plan we had made, every moment we had shared, now felt like a carefully constructed lie. Monday came, and I didn't even go to class. I stayed in the apartment, pretending to be sick. Ryan came in later, cheerful as ever, asking if I wanted to go grab food or watch a movie. I smiled faintly, trying to mask the storm inside me. He didn't notice. He had no idea that I knew. And part of me hated that he could be so oblivious, so comfortable, while I was unraveling completely. I decided to confront him, but I couldn't do it face to face. I didn't trust myself not to scream, not to cry, not to lose it completely. So I did the only thing I could think of. I set up my phone, recording. I would let him talk, see if he slipped, see if he admitted anything. I needed the truth directly from him. That evening, I waited until he thought I was asleep. I heard him come in, laugh with Emily on the phone, whisper her name. I pressed record and tried to steady my breathing. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. And then it happened. He left the apartment. I didn't follow immediately. I waited, my mind replaying every memory, every betrayal, trying to brace myself for what I might see. It wasn't long before I noticed him slipping out the side door, heading toward the corner coffee shop where Emily worked part-time. I followed, keeping my distance, watching as he walked in and wrapped his arms around her. The way she leaned into him, the way he smiled down at her, was a mirror of the way he used to look at me. My stomach turned. I felt sick, dizzy, my hands trembling uncontrollably. I stayed hidden in the parking lot for over an hour, watching them. I wanted to be anywhere else, but I couldn't look away. Every laugh, every whisper, every brush of the hand felt like a knife to my chest.
And then, as they finally separated, Emily giving him a quick peck on the lips before he left, I knew I had the evidence I needed. He was living a completely separate life, and I was just a character in it. When I got back to the apartment, I couldn't sit still. I paced, my mind racing with what I should do next. Call his parents? Confront Emily? Leave him immediately? I didn't know. I just knew I couldn't stay passive anymore. I couldn't pretend that everything was fine when my whole world had been built on lies. That night, Ryan came home, acting casual, like nothing had happened. I couldn't handle it. I waited until he was in the kitchen, then threw the phone on the counter, the screen showing all the texts, the screenshots, the proof of his betrayal. I remember the look on his face, the shock, the guilt, the panic. But there was no apology, no remorse, just denial. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, voice tight. I laughed, but it wasn't really a laugh. It was hollow, brittle, full of rage and pain. "Don't lie to me, Ryan. I have everything. I know about Emily. I know about the texts. I know about everything." He looked at me like I was crazy, like he was trying to convince me that I was imagining it all. But the evidence was there, clear as day, undeniable. And still he tried to twist it, to make me doubt my own sanity. "You don't understand. It's complicated. It's not what you think," he said. But I did understand. I understood perfectly. I understood that the person I loved, the person I trusted more than anyone else in the world, had been living a double life, sharing moments, love, and intimacy with someone else while I slept beside him, believing in us. I felt my hands shake with fury, my chest heaving with betrayal. And I realized in that moment that there was no coming back from this. Not for us, not for him, not for the life I thought we had. I told him to leave. I didn't argue, I didn't cry, I just stared at him as he packed a bag and left the apartment. I listened to the door click shut, felt the silence settle around me. And finally, for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to cry. Not softly, not gently, but fully, like I was letting all the grief, anger, and heartbreak pour out in one uncontrollable wave. The apartment felt empty, hollow, like it was echoing the loss I felt inside. I wandered from room to room, touching things, looking at memories, trying to process that the person I had trusted with my whole heart had betrayed me in the most complete, devastating way possible. I realized that the life I thought I had, the love I thought was real, had been a carefully constructed lie, and I had been living inside it, blind, for far too long. I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know if I ever could. All I knew was that I had to survive. Some fears were born inside us, while others were learned through experience, and the true meaning of those fears can only be understood when we allow ourselves to exist in them. When we ask the question, what if? Then we might finally see the picture completely. Every night, I'd wake up in a cold sweat, heart pounding, reliving every betrayal, every intimate moment he had shared with someone else while I was still believing in him. I started seeing him everywhere, in the coffee shop, in the park, even in the mirror, and I hated it. I hated that he had so completely invaded my life, even after he was gone. I began to withdraw from people, even friends who cared. I couldn't stand the thought of talking about it, explaining it, reliving it. But isolation brought clarity in its own twisted way. I started to understand the patterns of his manipulation, the subtle ways he had controlled my perception of reality without me even realizing it. I realized that the person I loved was not who I thought he was, and that for my own sanity, I had to accept that. And then came the texts. Out of nowhere, Ryan started messaging me again. "We need to talk," he wrote. "Please, just hear me out. I made mistakes, but I love you." I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, my hands shaking. Part of me wanted to respond, to hear the lies, to hear the excuses. But a louder, fiercer part of me knew that this was a trap. He wasn't asking to talk because he cared. He was asking to manipulate, to reel me back in, to convince me that I was overreacting, that the truth wasn't as bad as I thought. I deleted the message, then blocked him, then deleted it from my backups. But the rage didn't go away. It festered, simmered under my skin, flaring up at the smallest things. A song on the radio, a couple laughing on campus, even the sight of a brown-haired guy with that same crooked grin. I realized then that betrayal doesn't end when the person leaves. It stays with you, living in every memory, every routine, every small corner of your life. And I had to figure out how to survive it without letting it consume me entirely. I started spending more time with friends again, but cautiously. I was guarded, wary of letting anyone close enough to hurt me like that again. I buried myself in schoolwork, extracurriculars, anything that would keep my mind occupied. And somewhere in that chaos, I began to feel myself returning, not to the person I was before Ryan, but to someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who had survived something brutal and come out the other side, even if scarred. It wasn't revenge that fueled me. It wasn't closure. It was survival. The realization that I could go on, that I could breathe again without him, that I could exist in a world where he no longer had control over my emotions. That was power enough. I began to feel a cautious kind of hope, fragile but real. But even as I rebuilt myself, I couldn't escape the memory of him, the image of him with Emily, the texts from Samantha confirming everything I had feared. It was always there, a shadow that would flare up at unexpected moments, reminding me that betrayal leaves marks deeper than any visible scar. And I realized then that surviving Ryan wasn't about forgetting. It was about carrying the memory with you, learning from it, and refusing to let it define the rest of your life. And that's when the next shock came, the one I didn't see coming, the one that made me realize that betrayal isn't always over when the cheater leaves. I was walking across campus, head down, earbuds in, trying to drown out the noise of everything, when I saw him. Not just Ryan, but Ryan with someone new, someone who looked exactly like me, only better, smiling at him with that same crooked grin I had once adored. My chest tightened, my stomach dropped, and for a moment I felt like the ground had vanished beneath me. I wanted to run, I wanted to scream, I wanted to disappear entirely, but I couldn't. I just watched, frozen, as the man I had loved completely moved on, as if I had never existed. The rage flared hotter than ever, burning through the grief, the heartbreak, everything. And I realized with a painful clarity that this wasn't just about cheating anymore. This was about erasure, about him pretending I never mattered, pretending that the betrayal didn't leave a mark, pretending that he could live in a world where I was nothing more than a memory he could conveniently ignore. I walked away, barely breathing, my mind spinning, but a part of me, angry, stubborn, alive, whispered that I would survive this, that I would not let him erase me, that I would exist fully, even if he could not. And I knew then that the final confrontation wasn't going to be with him. It was going to be with myself, with the aftermath of his lies, with the truth of what had happened, and with the fierce, raw knowledge that I had survived something that could have broken me completely. I thought seeing him with someone new would be the worst of it. I really did. I thought that moment on campus, watching him laugh with another girl like our entire history had been wiped clean, was rock bottom. But life has a cruel way of showing you that you can always fall a little further, especially when you're dealing with someone who never fully tells the truth. A few days after that, I got a message from Samantha. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, and seeing her name pop up on my phone made my heart jump straight into my throat. For a second, I considered ignoring it. I was exhausted, emotionally drained. I didn't want to reopen wounds that were barely starting to scar over. But something told me I needed to read it. She didn't waste time easing into it. She just said she was sorry. Then she said she felt like she owed me the truth. That line alone made my stomach twist. We met at a diner off campus, one of those places with cracked vinyl booths and burned coffee that somehow never closes. It felt neutral, like a space that didn't belong to either of us. When she walked in, she looked nervous, almost guilty. She kept twisting her hands together, eyes darting around like she was afraid someone might overhear us. She told me Ryan hadn't just cheated with Emily. He hadn't just lied to me. He'd been doing this for almost our entire relationship.
Different girls, different excuses. Sometimes classmates, sometimes girls he met at parties, sometimes friends of friends. And the worst part was how casual she said it, like she'd been holding on to this information for so long it had lost its shock for her. She told me he used their apartment like a revolving door when I wasn't around. She told me she'd covered for him more times than she could count, at first because she didn't want drama, and later because he convinced her it wasn't serious, and that I'd never find out. She told me he used my trust like a shield. I sat there completely still, my hands wrapped around a mug I hadn't even touched. I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I just listened as my understanding of the past year completely collapsed. It wasn't one betrayal, it wasn't even two, it was a pattern, a lifestyle. What broke me wasn't just the cheating, it was realizing that the version of him I loved didn't exist the way I thought it did, that every memory I treasured had been happening alongside lies I never knew about, that while I was picturing a future with him, he was treating our relationship like a placeholder. When I left the diner, I sat in my car for a long time before turning the key. I felt hollow, like something essential had been removed from me, but underneath that emptiness there was something else starting to form. Not closure, not forgiveness, clarity.
For the first time, I stopped wondering what I did wrong. I stopped replaying conversations, searching for the moment where I could have prevented this. Because you don't accidentally become someone like that. You choose it, over and over again. Ryan tried reaching out again after that. New number, new account, same tone. Apologies, wrapped in excuses. He said he was confused. He said college messed him up. He said he never meant to hurt me. Reading his messages felt like watching someone perform a role they'd practiced too many times. There was no depth to it, no ownership, just panic at losing access to me. I didn't respond, not once. Instead, I started rebuilding my life in quiet, unglamorous ways. I rearranged the apartment, got rid of anything that felt too tied to him. I started taking different routes to class, found new coffee spots, new routines. I didn't announce my healing, I just lived it. Slowly, unevenly. Some nights were still brutal. I'd lie awake thinking about how real everything felt back then, how sure I was. Trust doesn't vanish cleanly, it leaves behind echoes. But those nights started coming less often, and when they didn't have the same power. The final time I saw Ryan was completely unplanned. I was at a bar with friends, one I never went to when we were together. I felt good that night. Not amazing, but solid, like myself again. Then I turned around and there he was, standing a few feet away, looking like he'd seen a ghost. He tried to talk to me, tried to apologize again, tried to explain himself like this was some misunderstanding that could be cleared up with the right words. And for the first time since all of this started, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no urge to scream or cry. Just distance. I told him I knew everything. Not just about Emily, not just about the lies I'd caught. Everything. And I watched his face change as he realized there was nothing left to hide behind, no version of the story where he came out clean. I didn't stay long. I didn't need to. Walking away felt different this time. It felt final. What stayed with me afterward wasn't revenge or satisfaction. It was peace. A quiet, steady peace that came from knowing I hadn't imagined it, hadn't exaggerated it, hadn't been too sensitive. I had trusted someone who didn't deserve it. And I survived the fallout. I don't romanticize that relationship anymore. I don't miss the version of him I thought I loved. I miss the girl I was before I had to learn that kind of lesson, but I also respect the woman I became because of it. Someone more aware, more grounded, less willing to ignore her instincts just to keep the illusion alive. Betrayal changes you. Not always in loud, dramatic ways. Sometimes it just strips things down to the truth. And the truth is this. I trusted my college boyfriend completely. And he broke that trust without hesitation. But he didn't get to keep the power that came with it. I walked away with my sense of self intact. And that's something he never had to begin with.